session of the Regional Local Authorities meeting, Local Leadership and Innovation for Resilient Territorial Development in Latin America and the Caribbean. I am Fresa Soltov, journalist and your MC for today as well. And having already addressed strategies of territorial planning on science, technology, and innovation for territorial development, today we are going to start exploring in a themed session followed by working groups, employment opportunities, and education needs. And precisely to start this meeting, I'd like to invite the Budget Director of Ministry of Finance of the Chilean government, Javiera Martinez Fariña, to give us a welcome speech. So please give her a warm round of applause. And also for the first speaker of today. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And today, when I woke up, I couldn't believe I was in such a beautiful place. So, dear national authorities, internationals, Undersecretary of Regional Administrative Development, Undersecretary of Finance, dear authorities of the IDB, representatives from the IDB in Chile, Ana Maria Yáñez, who's Vice President of different sectors and knowledge of the IDB, and regional mayors, both national and foreign, that are joining us today. In this meeting that we are here for, most likely one of the most important ideas that we are going to be developing together is how to move forward with the sustainable growth. We know that in Latin America and the Caribbean, it's difficult when it comes to funding innovation and development. Most often, integration with regional institutions is something that translates into an obstacle for our productive development. And also, it is known that we are in a context full of challenges such as decentralization, the transition towards more productive development models, and also the rise of the knowledge economy, and, at least in our case, a constant productive diversification that allows us to strengthen competitiveness and for both of regions. And then these partnerships that could happen between regional governments, different municipalities, universities, technical education centers, and different multilateral bodies and the private sector are essential to consolidate these development and innovation strategies to work in design and strengthening of a proper governance and development of public-private funding are, in our opinion, essential elements to achieve efficiency, sustainability, and better work over time. In this sense, and in the current President Boric administration, for us, and especially from the Ministry of Finance, there have been two initiatives that that are fundamental for us to contribute on this line. First, in terms of funding, to materialize fostering productive investment and competitiveness is or resources around the $1.5 billion that we are collecting right now from the mining royalty law are then distributed to different regions of the country. This law created a regional fund for productivity and development, which is allocated by means of regional governments and is about fostering productive activities for regional development and technological and scientific research, which is close to 1.1% of the GDP. This fund, which is only for regions and which is focused particularly on that. And also, this fund is supplemented with funds associated to municipalities. This is on the funding side, which is a first step, but today the most important challenge we face in terms of enabling conditions at the local level is about the fact that this resource availability may be together with better faculties and powers from regional governments. Thanks to the technical cooperation we have received from the IDB during this year, are working on a draft bill which we submitted for more than 1 year ago for stronger regions, which supplements or adds new faculties for regional governments regarding fiscal decentralization. And I could go on for a long time about how this centralist structure, particularly in our country, regarding fiscal aspects, but other aspects as well. While the second President Bachelet administration made progress in this regard, we also made progress on transmitting competencies between the different regional governments. Most likely, our main challenge is to move forward on decentralization. This draft bill has the objective of strengthening the fiscal capacity of the regions, but also and particularly strengthen our capacity to generate our own instances for regional projects, improve transparency and accountability for everybody involved. When we looked at this with the IDB about the best practices and the handbook of the international experience when it comes to centralization, we found that first, what this draft bill does establishes a clear regime in terms of what the government does, coherent with the responsibilities of the government, and also strengthening industrial economy to improve accountability, enable regional governments to generate their own revenues beyond the transfers and generate their own revenue sources to have a more balanced source of revenue. Particularly, financing is pretty relevant when it comes to the challenges and fiscal centralization in terms of revenue. In Chile, only 17% of all revenue are collected at the subnational level. The OECD average is 27%, so we have a 10% gap regarding other countries, just to compare to similar countries. And also, the budget of the national government is still highly reliant of the central government regarding the entirety of the resources of the regional government. 90% are transferred from the central government, so our own revenue is pretty small. In the case of regional governments, this draft bill, which strengthens our capability to have our own revenue among other types of income, legally enables us to have other financing structures such as a public credit from multilateral entities, which are operations that will open up new funding opportunities for regional governments, and at least in our experience in the central government are really important. And as we have had a very interesting portfolio, especially with the IDB, so that's why I didn't want to waste the opportunity to thank you for this work with the Inter-American Development Bank. They have been a really strong source of support, seeking innovative solutions for the challenges of sustainable development. Particularly, we also have operations related to regional governments. We have many operations that are ongoing, more than with which we're preparing maybe more than $1.5 billion, and also more than 50 technical non-reimbursable operations. One of the important programs we are preparing together, so that is strengthening regional governments and infrastructure management, urban services at the metropolitan scale, the new legislation that allows us to have metropolitan areas, a concept which was not there before in our legislation, and also the neighborhood revitalization program, which is in its second version. But finally, I want to tell you about other collaboration schemes we have found in this partnership between the Chilean government and the IDB. And I believe these are pretty innovative initiatives that are interesting to get to know and account for. Yes. First, the IDB is one of our strategic partners in the construction of this facilitation for green hydrogen. This is a unique operation within the framework of the collaborations we have today in Chile. And also, we have been working in a funding scheme for the water and the electricity services in Easter Island, a state company that has a very specific social objective in that territory. And we are working together and finalizing the previous steps so we can account for this valuable work in terms of cooperation, and which is very useful for the Easter Island, the resilience program. And also, we have found innovative solution when it comes to collaboration and funding, particularly with the electricity stabilization fund, which contributed to structuring financial easing of these instruments. This is a an operation that has an important mobilization of private resources to address an important problem of our country, and if I remember correctly, it's one of the most important market operations in Latin America. So it's about these ideas that we have been working on in a public collaboration, at least at the multilateral level, which has been really relevant for our country in this administration, and always thinking and innovating in this funding structure that we have. We do believe regional governments who we work with the most from the budget department will also be able to have a fiscal decentralization framework which is clearer, more advanced, which is up to date regarding what we see in other parts of the world. We'll also be able to diversify this income, which is fundamental for these challenges in terms of infrastructure and productive development we are facing. I didn't want to go on for too long, but we have a lot to say, so thank you so much and have a great day. Okay, thank you so much to our budget director. The first speaker for today. We are going to now ask Florencia Atademojic, representative from IDB in Chile, so she can also give us a welcoming speech. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the second instance of this important meeting of local, regional governments in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have the honor, and I say we have, because I have been here for 4 years by now and I feel a part of this great country. We have the honor of holding this in Chile and even better in Punta Arena. I'd like to also emphasize with what the previous speaker said and thank the Minister of Finance, the Ministry of Finance for their help when preparing this forum with the IDB, who are already leaving, and formally we will be doing next meeting in Santiago, and the regional governor, of course, all our colleagues from the IDB who have collaborated. But I will move away from the script that was prepared, so I can also thank Chile and their people for the trust placed in the IDB group in the last 4 years where I've been the representative. Really, we have been working in an excellent manner, not only with the central government, but with regional governments as well, local governments in these previous years, and it's an honor to work with a country such as Chile, their people, their state policies, their resilience, their strength to move forward with policies that they know will benefit their people. And this brings me to decentralization and the fruitful session we had yesterday. I really believe that you co-created solutions and discussed fundamental topics for sustainable development of countries, not just local and regional governments, but from countries as a whole. Countries as a set of territories, after all. We thought it was really important to talk about cities and regions on one hand, thinking that science, technology, and innovation can be an territorial economic development axis, and also thinking that said economic development must take place within a territorial sustainable development, which is inclusive, co created with all of us that are part of a territory. We also hear the valuable contribution not only from public policymakers, mayors, regional governors, but also international experts who have studied this topic, who have been through their own experiences. Not everything is just taken out of a box and there you have a magic solution, but you do learn from all experiences. You can adapt experiences. What we heard allowed us to deepen the importance of productive development, as mentioned by the Undersecretary yesterday, now by Dr. Martinez, reinforced the role of cities as inclusive growth drivers. They need to align local national policies, which was clearly mentioned, and strengthen our comparative advantage. Today, continuing with that conversation, we are going to be focusing on employment opportunities and technical professional education needs derived from transformation processes in our productive sector. This is important in all countries, all regions, and all communities, but particularly so here in Magallanes, in this beautiful region, as the governor said yesterday. This region is at the growth junction, which is really important, where they must find a path between economic development with technology, productivity growth, but at the same time preserve the local idiosyncrasy, the local culture, and the environment all together. I believe this is going to be a very interesting lecture. I will stop now so I can hear from and learn from all of you. But I would like to end by saying that you will always be able to count with the IDB here in Chile for the region and for every country in Latin America, so we can help you in an efficient fashion with growth, productivity, resilience, and safety for everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so thank you so much to our representative from the IDP. We are now going to continue with the first themed session of the day, or the third rather, from these two sessions: job opportunities and education needs. After these two welcoming speeches, we are going to start our third and last session on job opportunities, as I said, and educational needs, where we will be exploring various strategies to anticipate ourselves to labor demands and also identify gaps and coordinate education strategies. And we are going to ask our moderator, Veronica Alaimo, a specialist and leader of the Social Protection and Labor Markets Division from the IDB, to join us. Please give her a warm round of applause. And also the panelist, Sonia Gontero, specialist on wages and work time on the South Cone office of the ILO, International Labor Organization. Another round of applause, please. Natalia Didiover, and Executive Director of the Future of Work, so FOFA, while they are joining us up on the stage, and Ricardo Lamadrid, former Director of Technology and Advanced Learning from the Ministry of Education from the Vasco government in Spain. So we are going to look at the third topic of these two sessions, and then these educational needs and employment opportunities. Good morning. Thank you so much for this invitation and from being here in this beautiful country. Well, I have been told that we need to be very brief on time because otherwise the ship is going to leave with or without us. So we are going to try and be very strict on time so we can then be able to develop the working groups and enjoy the evening. So I do believe that many were commenting this in the introductory speeches, but yesterday we addressed territorial challenges and productive. And there were common challenges. The words that came up the most were coordination, governance, and these issues are made evident in our sector and with an even greater challenge, which is about generating employment opportunities for everyone. So, we know that this is a huge challenge. I think we are all aware of this in this region, and we especially about informal work. 55% of all workers in Latin America and the Caribbean do so informally, which means no contract, no social security, no protection whatsoever. And behind that, there are many other elements. I mean, this is a symptom of some other issues that are behind. And one of the most important things is that we have a workforce that is not prepared, does not have the necessary skills to access better paying jobs. And this is a huge challenge. We also have young people who are disenfranchised from an educational system which is not encouraging them, which is not preparing them properly. So when they go out to the labor market, they are not ready for it. We have cultural issues together with some deficient, poor care system, which keeps many women from participating in labor markets. And when you talk about this at the regional level, these are the common issues we have with all countries, but in each country it's going to have its own difficulties to address this barrier to a greater or lower degree. So then, I think, at least for me, that I work on this at the national level, something very important, and also to realize the huge diversity within each country, and also in terms of these policies. Today, besides all of these problems I already mentioned that for me are really difficult, that have been mentioned by Director Rines, we have a very changing scenario with lots of uncertainty, and that makes it so people have even more difficulties when it comes to getting good jobs. But on the same side, we have technology, which brings opportunities of how to leverage all the data available on job sites and different sources of information so we can know the skills of everybody. And that's the first step. And then we have to know where these people are to measure this gap and try to narrow it down as much as we can, which is a huge challenge for all of us. Sorry, I'm going on for a bit too long. So, just a bit to talk about these topics. We have three great guests. I'm going to mention them briefly. Okay. We are joined. We have Sonia Gontero, who is specialist in wages and work time in the South Cone office from the ILO in Santiago de Chile. We are then joined by Ricardo Lamadrid, former Director of Technology and Advanced Learning from the Ministry of Education from the Chilean Government in Spain, and Natalia Lidijover, Executive Director and General Manager of SOFOFA and Human Capital. So, first, we are going to put a Sonia's presentation up. So if in the meantime, if you can tell us a bit about how do you see this problem from the ILO and how you can contribute in that sense. Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to the bank for the invitation to participate today. Really, I feel honored to be here in this beautiful scenario, and personally, it's been a really enriching experience to hear from all of you and the work we did in the different groups. Hearing from your experiences, it was very enriching. Sometimes you feel that you are taking more than what you can give, but let's hope I can at least give something back. I believe yesterday, in terms of planning, science, and technology, one way or the other, we ended up talking about employment and the labor market. So, what I was expecting to say, I think, summarizes the post it we did yesterday, because so many of the things that are there were already said, but I'm only more analytical than political, so I need to do this, like developing a structure, which is why I developed a presentation. I'm not sure if we can share it on the screen. Looks like, aha, there it is. Okay, perfect. So, as I was saying, many of the things I wanted to share have been mentioned yesterday. I'm going to start this main objective that local governments have, which is about generating public policies, generate growth, inclusion of their people, and sustainability in the territory, when seeking most mainly prosperity and inclusion of their people. When we think about problems in the labor markets, and on the economic side, we on one hand we have supply given by workers, and on the other side we have demand. We need to address both aspects, and the main issue is how can we attract and retain talent in these regions, because there are many cases where we have people on how to include people coming from other regions or even other countries in these communities, and the problem how to make this. So this is skills are the ones that are needed in the market, and on the demand side, we need to generate jobs for people to work. We have to mention the three main risks all governments face, which are happening because the transitions we see are both demographic, technological, and environmental, which were mentioned yesterday as well. And all of you know them. I just wanted to tell you that the demographic transition, we didn't mention that as much yesterday, is very important in this region. Data shows that the aging process in our region is accelerating even further than the same process Europe went through decades ago. So, in some countries in the region, this has been a very and continues being a very important problem. These three effects have very important economic, social impacts, which we have all thought about. I've just picked a few for the labor market, such as the skill shortages. That is, there are no workers, and it may happen in some sectors, some regions, or some specific jobs. You cannot find people to do the job. Skills mismatch. So that is, there are workers, but maybe they are not capable of doing the required job. And job polarization processes in some regions, for example, only low skilled or very high skilled workers are needed, and there is less demand for the mid qualified workers, an increase in vulnerable groups. And let's think, for example, of a platform workers. It was not mentioned so much, but there's a lot for the creation for jobs, but these are not necessarily long-term jobs. Displacement of workers, especially in the context of economies that are moving forward to decarbonization. As our colleague from Guajira, Colombia was commenting yesterday. So very quickly, we have to add all the problems at the local level, which were also mentioned yesterday, where we do have restrictions. Everything we mentioned on these policies, sometimes there is no possibility to have an influence on national policy, or there is very little flexibility to adapt to local needs. budgetary restrictions, so we discuss them, but we need to think that there are also advantages, and we need to take advantage, redundant as it may sound, of those. If even you guys who know the region the best, you who inhabit this region every day, so it's about generating trust, to have a possibility to have a dialogue and generate from bottom to top policies. And very quickly, in yet another box, I'm not going to read everything, don't worry, but the way I see it, we need to work in the difficulty policymakers are having, which is about working on both sides of the process, supply and demand, right? So, on the supply side, workers and governments have a very important role when it comes to strengthening work institutionality, strengthening work relationships, and there are many other policies which are beyond the work environment, but it's about having workers with the necessary skills, care, health, education policies, and so on. At the same time, work on demand policies, which are about being productive and investing and so on. So, and in the middle, I included policies that bring this supply and demand together, sort of, where we find all of these active labor market policies, and that is those policies that help people connect to demand improve their skills for a better working environment. Among these policies, I'd like to highlight four: um, training and professional education, both to grow in your role or reinvent yourself. And then the certification of competencies is a very important tool which is done here in Chile. So it's possible that many people that have a given job, which who may need a title, a certificate, a great degree, a certification that can do this certification, redundant as it may sound, laboral mediation, very important, which can help and prepare people to be connected with the labor market and work-related information. The public sector has a very important role to play there because, well, most often the private sector is not so efficient when it comes to producing that. All of this is in a context of governance, which has also been mentioned yesterday with all the difficulties it brings. So, as you may have seen, I think it's a good summary, but many of the topics that were mentioned yesterday, I see this in a more schematized way. Thank you, Sonia. Yes, this is a just an overview of what we are going to be addressing, and these issues are all relevant and in to a greater or lesser degree adapt to the reality of each country and local government. So here we have Ricardo, who is going to be talking about the experience of his country in Spain, and also Natalia is going to tell us how we can bring this to the local regional reality with some examples. I'm not sure if you want to. Ricardo, can you tell us just a bit of how the education system works and training system works? Because it's very important. Maybe you don't know it, but these systems are very different, not only within the region. So, to think about local solutions, we need to be able to understand the context in which they take place. So, just 5 minutes, okay? So, thank you so much. And I want to thank you for inviting me to this event, which has been a very enriching experience. And I've had some really great experience and learned some good practices for Spain. So, having said that, in there almost a 13 hours flight from Santiago, and from Santiago to here, we get a coffee, and on the coffee cup it says sustainability. Next step. Or and I start with the end because that's our goal. I mean, if government has in its policies. I mean, we have a strategy, a 2030 agenda, basically, which one way or the other is also under the umbrella of the United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development, and even more so, so the other strategies of our government, the regional government, a bit over 2 million inhabitants. We are only 3 provinces, and our governance model is the following. We have different strategic government planning, which where all the different department intervenes on diversities, health, but all of them have to contribute to being able to develop this plan. All departments participate in this plan. From this design, every department contributes to this plan here, here, and here. This happens on professional training, for example. We have a science, technology, and innovation plan, which is based on specialization and management strategy in the past country. This is a diagnosis we do somehow to highlight our strong suits and the not so strong ones. So, but this is where I'm going to focusing my investment, not just money, but time-wise, and emerging sectors as well, where we can design an integration. And in that plan, the technical professional training is considered as an innovation. And I emphasize this because it's important to consider that it can be done. You can do innovation in science and technology, and it's urgent. Applied innovation and applied to SMEs. SMEs in the past country, which I think 94% of our productive capacity, who have enough resources to access universities, technological centers, and capitalize on this professional training. We help on this first step for this applied innovation. But in productive terms, there is a comparative advantage. So, for example, another of the plans where professional training participates and also institutional, the entrepreneurship aspect in the past government in communication with the 3 provinces, but also the mayors of the municipalities, because it's not the same to have an entrepreneurship, for example, from one province and the other, because both situations are different, so you need to adapt and customize the strategy. And for example, when it comes to our professional training, it also contributes to this internationalization strategy, for example. And then it's about, for example, visiting different countries in Europe, different countries in America. And let's look at this in economic terms and innovation. All of this market strategy is very much focused on people. I want to think that what's important is to work on the competitiveness of each citizen in our vast country in terms of not just economic terms, but that these people can be competitive in their life and provide them with technical capabilities and also soft skills which are useful for people to face their future in such a way that we are not just talking about jobs, but we have to work so people can be more employable. And the more employable they are, the more competitive the territory will be, and the region of the vast country as a whole. So it's how we are positioned in terms of people. Thank you so much, Ricardo. Natalia, if you can tell us just a bit, maybe of from Chile, we have this tax franchise, a benefit that people and company can use to write their taxes off by means of expenses and training. So that's why we have these technical bodies, intermediate training bodies, for example, the one Natalia is working in. So if could you tell us a bit about your experience in how SOFOFA has been supporting the development of skills in our workers. Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here in the broadest sense of the word. And I will just try to explain what SOFOFA is and what we do in 5 minutes. So join me in this explanation. So who are we? So FOFA is an industrial union in Chile. It's been here for 140 years ago. The Ministry of Economy is fostering the development of specialist unions. These are voluntary as opposed of what may happen in many of your countries, and so these unions operate in terms of which are the mechanisms for people to join together and to share good practices amongst others. 140 years, so 47 ago, so FOFA and the Ministry of Economy again, we're discussing the obstacles we face for the development and the idea that we have a human capital problem to be addressed. And therefore, we created different mechanisms for developing human capital, out of which two are easier to apply. First is training the tax franchise, which is a mechanism by means of which companies or parties back then can write off up to 1% of what they pay in taxes with the commitment that they are going to be investing the same amount, so it's a 1-to-1 ratio for the development of human capital. I am a manager of one of these specific bodies, so we can make use of this tax franchise. So at the same point in time, we decided to provide and create a model to bring technical schools and connect them to the industry even better. And we also manage schools from SOFOFA, trying to increase the capabilities and employability of these students and matching them with what the industry needs. And 10 years ago, 10 years ago now, it happened that SOFOFA started asking itself about the human capital situation again. Why must we have this bureaucracy, this tax franchise? Why do we manage schools? And we asked ourselves a big, deep question. What did we need today to close these human capital gaps in the country? And we started an innovation journey 10 years ago where really the bank has been a good partner. And the first thing we found is that we needed mechanisms in Chile for understanding the labor market, so we worked on having work observatories in each regions in this country, a public policy. And here in the OTIC, we were convinced that we wanted to be a laboratory for public policies, and that was one of the roles we needed to have. That is, to share mechanisms by means of which people could share these public policies and improve their human capital. After that, we designed strategies to try and narrow the most obvious capital human gaps, and digital related ones appeared very quickly together with the IDB and our digital improvement. The idea to train people on digital skills in as short as possible, but the skills that the industry needed. So we surveyed the needs of the industry. We compared these plans and started training people so they could get in there. And immediately at the same time, we said, okay, but we are using instruments and mechanisms that were here 47 years ago to account for the needs of today in the labor market. And then we go to the last part of what my presentation was saying, and I'm leading a corporation which tries to understand everything which is about this phenomena rising from this and the work we are doing, and try to, okay, I only have 1 minute left. And what we try to do to turn this problem over, and instead of coming from an instrument or capitalism to think about solutions from there, trying to understand it from there, about the needs that we have, we try to be the actors that try to develop a plan and all the instruments and all the possibilities to have an impact, hopefully, on the territories where people really are. Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to ask you to please comment on the general systems, because as I was saying, each opportunity, for example, the case of Chile is a particular case which doesn't happen in other countries, right? In other countries, for example, this is funded with different taxes such as payroll, and something that can be obtained directly from a different place. So, okay, if you want, Sonia, why don't you tell us very briefly, okay, in 5 minutes, a bit of how the ILO promotes the decent work.
Verónica. Bueno, gracias por recibir y contarte un poco lo que hace mi institución, la institución a la cual yo represento en el día de hoy. Bueno, decirles que la Organización Internacional del Trabajo es una agencia que la palabra lo dice, se dedica al mundo del trabajo, es una agencia del sistema de Naciones Unidas. Naciones Unidas tiene su sede en Nueva York, ¿cierto? Está la Agencia para la Educación, UNESCO, para la Infancia, UNICEF, bueno, la del Trabajo, que es la Organización Internacional del Trabajo. Tiene más de 100 años, responde a la primera alerta mundial con el principal compromiso de los países de global desarrollo.
Social goods, social work, I'm sorry, social dialogue, work rights, and social protection. How is this done? In three ways. Well, this is the only tripartite organization of the system, means that it's formed by company representatives, governments, and workers in equal participation. These organizations or representatives work in three areas mainly: international work norms, that are commitments that are acquired. We see that through conventions and recommendations. International work norms, development of knowledge through analysis, public policies, for example, harmonization of statistics. All countries have work surveys and home surveys. The information is compiled and it makes possible to make a comparison among countries and the promotion of dialogue. And a third aspect of the organization is the development of non-specific programs in territories or on-site. So this is possibly related to the work that you perform, in the sense that, well, how do we download this internationally to each country, where each country would define their decent work program? I'm just putting a name on it, where the priorities of the countries are decided for the next years, and the organization works in fulfilling those commitments in particular projects. That is, and that goes to the territories. Well, I'm available for any questions that you may have. Well, Ricardo, if you can tell us the country boat is a very interesting history from the 80s, and it's a European example of a very advanced region. So can you tell us in 10 minutes your experience in the ministry of how these processes have worked out in the sector? Well, that was quite a critical. There was quite a critical moment in Spain in 2008 to 2011 because of its industrial twist. It's a more complex economy that soothes this strong crisis. We have the enough forces to deal with it. And that time, in 2012, we had a very political a very important political meeting where the Basque government decided to revert or transform their productive tissue to be able to ex- excel and have a sustainable model through time, a model that doesn't collapse. And that's where different models in Europe start to be applied. And they have a very important training. 50% of the professionals have a degree, a professional technical degree, and we start working on that. We started working on that, investing equipment and effort and money in the training of professionals. That's where the transformation began. I arrived in the government in 2007, and that's when the green transformation began. And these transformations have more impact in the technical positions. So we have to focus our efforts and train, form, and prepare the professionals that will be in those positions. It's clear that to be a sustainable company, it's necessary for the technicians to be prepared. So we did that in Europe. And the planning of the training offer is done with the government in consensus with local and governmental authorities, mayors, because they are the ones that either suffer or enjoy the reality of their locality. So in each locality, we have 2 or 3 professionals with technical professional training. I'm going to speak about 3 councils of different magnitude. The first one is San Sebastián. It received an North American investment fund, and it has 3 candidate cities to be able to invest. And that arrives through the Department of the Presidency through an organism called Invest Country, and it gets in touch with professional training because the sector of investment was the pharmaceutical world, and there the Basque country didn't have so much muscle, so to say, and the determining factor for investing in the technological park was that it had the precise grounds to search for professionals. Because what was needed? Professors of that area to work with the company and design a professional plan. We designed a curriculum for those job positions, for what was needed. And to date, the Spanish government itself has developed a professional masters for this, and the company, that initial company was bought by Bayer, and that's an example, or the professional training that is provided by a company that lands in that territory. We have the Urheim effect in a city called Bilbao. that is very polluted due to navy construction. So it was transformed through a different model of city. So this city was reconstructed and industry was transformed. First, it became a pole of advanced services of high added value, like consulting, engineering, that are centered or focused in Bilbao. And you realize that these companies that have their offices in Bilbao don't have talent. Bilbao, as part of its strategy as a pole of advanced services in Europe, has made an analysis and realized that most job posts are technical positions. So we started to implement different specialization programs in the different sectors, security, administration, and different sectors. And somehow the design is done among the government, the council, and companies. In all these strategies, we have the professional Basque Council, that is the promoter. Then we have the unions, and then we have the formative agents. So, and public and private events. So this is agreed among all these parties. This is the closest example I could find. A company that is in Musky Council, one of the most powerful companies, Petronor, it's a refinery. It was actually. But now, after this renewable energy movement decided it wasn't sustainable, and it moved to another energy source, and it bet strongly on hydrogen. After betting strongly on hydrogen, it noted that it would need professionals to attend to all the needs. So it went to us and universities. 30% of professionals needed university training and the other technical training. Well, we didn't have that profile. Some training offers did adjust in a medium fashion, but not precisely. So a curriculum was created for this profile. And we had the fourth generation that had a very curious itinerary. 2 years of professional training, and then the students go on to a university degree of 3 years. One of the degrees is convalidated, and the professional profile turns out to be very interesting for the hydrogen aspect because of the technical and university knowledge. So there are councils with agents like mayors or mayoresses or government officials, but one of the slogans of this center is that all the centers must comply with 3 premises. Professionals must be agile, simple, and shared. That's very simple to say, but actually very difficult to implement. But in our case, we actually could do so. Any agent can be the detonator of a specialization course. The window is open, although the responsibility of implementing it is of the Basque government. Thank you, Ricardo. That's very interesting. We see in that example all the coordination required. It makes me think about adapting to the needs that can be smaller and sometimes bigger. And what you say, it's very important to arrive on time. How do we make it if we don't have people prepared for that moment? Due to any circumstances, the plans don't get to be implemented because of preparation is very crucial. So, Natalia, could you tell us in 10 minutes about the lessons learned in your case? I changed my plan of speaking while I was listening to Ricardo. Let me remember 5 years ago when I was talking about rethinking about what we're doing. What I didn't say is that the education training system must be in public policies that are the best and worst policies assessed by citizens. So there's a very critical outlook in that regard. And in that context, the technological acceleration, that what in that time was our best resources, we would present that to the companies and they would say 5 months of training? No, thank you. So it sounded very, very good on paper, but companies didn't accept that. So we decided to come back to the IBD, to the work ministry, SOFOFA, and tell them, look, if this happens in Chile, it happens around the world. It's not just about us. So what's the rest of the world doing? And thanks to the bank, we knocked on the door of the European Union. And in a conversation, it changed my mindset forever, and I'll bring it here. We were with the consultant in the European Union that was explaining us how they were handling their work situation. And he told me 7 years ago, they had changed the format of taxonomy, and instead of having an improvisation in the posts, in the names of the position, they were getting the skills and putting them as a hierarchical axis in taxonomy. Maybe you're having the same issue that we did. So in a Excel, he put the skills, but he realized that that wasn't the right way, and he cleared it up by saying, if you don't understand the impact of what I'm telling me, go and look at the at the radio or music device of your child and tell me, what music are you listening to? And he'll look at you with a strange face because he doesn't know what album the songs that he's listening to are from. So this is the same in the training and employment. Nobody cares about the album, the name of the position. What's important are the skills. So our head just exploded, and we realized that we needed to do a Spotify of skills, and it seemed like an incredible vision. And we realized we had to do dynamic employment maps that are that revolve around skills, that allows people to say, look, here I am, I have certain skills and I can work in that job. It sounded so beautiful. We've been working on that for 5 years, and today we have a process where we go and we say to the candidate, look, tell me about your professional history, and we conclude what are the skills of that candidate. We do this with with tools, and we tell the candidate what they need to learn to reach the position. So that also allowed us to understand, now that we have technology that allows us to administer little things, we can rethink everything, because part of the difficulties of implementing public policies and tools and territories is that it sounds good on paper. When the person that designed this said, well, okay, we're going to have a policy for this and that, and for different things, but on site, it's very difficult to implement that, because we have persons with their own life stories, companies that want to develop, and it's hard to implement. I have to go to the policies of women, and I have to attend to policies of companies, and I need to see how we can work together with these policies. And here, for example, what happens when the industry that wants to be developed doesn't exist? What we discovered is that when you can apply systemic thought and stop thinking through variable tendencies and put the skills into maps, and second, when you can gather the skills, you can form paths to tread. That means go to the territory, understand the productive development of that territory, to the current ones and to the ones that will, to the people that want to leave also. And from that complexity, to understand the abilities and complexities required in people to make that happen. And once that's defined, build the most efficient plans possible. I'd like to put an example.
When you look at this industry of green hydrogen with these different changes that require, for example, to install this in Mexico, and believe that you need to go out and look people with complete proof degrees outside because they are not in your territory. These new engineers just do not exist. This is about just training hydrogen engineers and waiting 7 years for them to be ready. And when you break that down and think about skills, it's first about capitalizing and break this down on which are the transversal skills that can already be applied, that are already known. How much is there in common? How much there is between an hydrogen hydrolysis technician and the already existing chemical engineering, and only turning the gap and develop a roadmap that is possible. I like simple examples. This city, when we start having hydrogen, then we'll be needing people at the port who have different capabilities from those they have now. Do I need to go out there and look for those people, or do I need to train the people who are going to be loading the ships, these vessels that are going to be using hydrogen, so they can have specific skills and know the specific risks? We have to do that. That's not going to take us 5 or 3 years of very specific training. Firefighters will need to be understanding as well how to manage the hazards of hydrogen. We need to go and find them in Finland because they know about it. No, I need to be able to train and specialize our firefighters. And then you can bring these large plans and roadmaps to specific smaller levels. In the case of Puebla, where we need to attract investment to be able to make the parts that are usually not made so they can enter the US, and we combine the roadmap with a territorial planning, which is we're really interesting in this sense. In such a way, we develop this with 4 axes, where you may be thinking on how to bring what we need and the capacities that are required, and also how vendors require new skills related to this investment attraction, and how this facilitates the possibility of social approval. These are not different axes. We need communities that approve these projects and the installation of these plants. What are we going to do so this relationship happens? That's our dream, if you will. For example, that the sons and daughters of people from the region do not need to leave Magallanes. If we can develop something that make them stay, then we can do something that leverages everything else we do. This is what we learned how to do in these last few years in terms of technology to address what humans have been unable to do from data. Second, productive processes today and a vision focused future, and be able to translate these into activities and roadmaps that can be leveraged from territories, industry, and people. So, this can be the case to not separate these two paths, rather, develop the whole map. Thank you, Natalia. I think this is a good summary because I'm already told that we are short on time. So, I'm not sure if anybody else wants to ask a question. I was saying that I wanted to ask Ricardo. You told what you did in the Basque Country, but you didn't mention what was not positive. Where did you make mistakes? Can you share one of the key ones, especially when it comes to human capital, so we can learn from here? And how can we avoid having to bring specialized people from outside, but rather train Chileans first and outside Latin America? Why not? So, what did not work out in your country? How can we start on all this upskilling of human capital? Well, I'm going to be talking about something from 2024, basically. So, which is one of the things that didn't work, and it's a bit more recent. We designed a talent strategy and we outsource an advisory service in competitiveness, which is what we collaborate a lot. And these people take care of quote unquote meetings with different departments and some government departments for this. And it turns out that they meet with the education department as well, the universities, and professional training in one state. And when this meeting takes place, quote unquote, decisions had already been made. And we need to change them from top to bottom because what was discussed in those industry departments, they had one vision for all the companies that we are going to be doing things a certain way without taking into account neither the flows nor the processes of the educational system. And at the university and the primary secondary levels, these were not taken into account. And they went to the environmental advisory, same thing on the healthcare sector, same thing. Then they go to the Department of Education, say no. Who is generating this measure? Is it talent? Do we create it? Do we retain them? Or do we bring it or do we attract it? The first priority is let's create it because talent is leaving us. People are leaving to other European countries because they can find better conditions, salaries, even professional development may be better. And that was one of our most important mistakes. So we needed to change all of this and then hold the meetings with different departments because in this case it was the creator, the generator of these ideas who said this. And all of this is in a law. All the accreditation is done by the educational system. And well, that's where we screwed up. It was a communication screw up, collaboration and coordination as well of the different departments. Thank you so much, and we don't have more time left. I hope you have been inspired for the working groups to think about this employment and training needs. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the four of you for this conversation. And we are going to say goodbye on streaming. Hopefully, you have enjoyed this exchange of experiences and knowledge. And we also have hope this has been an opportunity for exchanging ideas on resilient national territory. That's the end of our streaming, and we want to invite everybody else before going to the coffee to please grab this book, which is in each of your tables. You have it is printed here in the city of Punta Arenas, and what's relevant is that you can find the schedule in a QR code on the second page, where you can see the photos, videos, the images we have collected between yesterday and today, and also the program and lots of technical information that we